Good morning, world. Happy Sunday. Steph here with today's edition of Soil and Soul on Sacred Earth Essentials, where I believe the earth is sacred and you are too. So this is the weekend edition. For now, covering both Saturdays and Sundays. We'll do it in one video until I'm able to pre-record some things. Because I like to observe one day a week with no technology as best as possible and really just focusing on things at home. So today we're going to do a recap of the week and a few other interesting topics. Why am I showing you this tree? It's a type of evergreen, but more so I'm showing you this ground beneath it because in the warmer months there are fly agaric. There are Amanita muscarias that grow here, the yellow ones with the white polka dots. I have not ate them yet, but I find it fascinating that they grow here. They also grow in my yard, but there's a large patch that proliferates here. And I think it's interesting because here we are in the middle of winter in Vermont, and those creatures, they're still existing underneath the surface, just like a lot of the other different types of mycelium that grow here. Wow, look at that scene. So I know we have reishi on the property, there are chanterelles, there are Indian pipes, ghost pipes, there are I've seen some of those honey mushrooms, and we looked at the chaga the other day. It's technically not a mushroom. It's kind of like a cancer on the tree. And there are hen of the woods and lion mane in this area as well. So lots of life still teeming underneath the surface of the frozen soil, waiting for warmer days when they can surface again, just like some aspects of ourselves. So this week we covered, since the beginning, what is soil, the soil here formed by ancient glaciers that moved through and created these lakes. We discussed what is soul. There's the moon. I love this time of day when the moon and the sun are both out at the same time, kissing of the moon and the sun. We covered several different trees, which if you look at, there's a post from Conscious Planet with the Sadhguru Save Soil movement that recently discussed the importance of trees and why we need trees on this earth, how essential they are. We looked at birch, white pine, and the eastern cedar, the juniper virginiana variety. We looked at chaga briefly, and in the future we'll be going over more individual plants as well as have some guests planned. So stay tuned to cover other topics that they're experts in, including things like living soil and Korean natural farming and regenerative practices. So what's cool is all these trees who lost their leaves are dusted in snow right now. They too will regenerate life because their roots go deep and they know how to store the nutrients, the sustenance they need in their roots for colder times. Speaking of cold, my hands are freezing right now. I also wanted to mention I ran across an old acquaintance of mine from here in Vermont on social media this morning. So there are benefits of social media, and she does amazing work as a death doula here in Vermont. You should check her out. Her name is Anne-Marie Keppel. She's also a lifelong meditation practitioner, and hopefully she will accept an invitation to be on my podcast so we can talk about the soul and death and what she's experienced helping people pass on. And so when we're talking about soil and soul, and we're looking at this imminent threat of soil extinction, therefore life extinction, or at least human extinction, one must think about, on some level, their own death and their own feelings about death, and whether or not a person believes that a soul is a real thing, and what happens to the soul, when the body dies. It is cold out and Yoda wants to go in. So today, this is also a Martin Luther King Jr. weekend. It's a holiday weekend here in the United States, where many of us celebrate his life and his work and what his work did for civil rights and equality in the United States and beyond. So, I know that there are discrepancies about some of his behavior. He was a preacher and a Christian, which I identify with and appreciate, but also was known to be promiscuous. And so one may call him a hypocrite in that regard. But speaking from my own personal experience, I know that I have been a hypocrite in my life, that I have made mistakes in my life, but there are times when my behavior might appear to not have matched my beliefs or my values. And I know lots of people in other prominent positions who one may say the same thing about. And I think that the most important thing is that we don't attach ourselves to other people's behavior, and that we learn to have compassion and unconditional love for our fellow humans, which includes the understanding that we're all perfectly imperfect, that most of us make mistakes, and that it is a challenge to be 100% pure in that regard from those standards, depending on how you define purity and what that means to you. I recently read a definition of purity that was less about what a person had done in regards to good or bad, and more about a person being in line with their own authenticity and integrity, and that when following those authentic, natural impulses or inclinations that are really in line with, do you hear the lake? I love that sound. That there is purity in that when we're purely connected to the life force, to the breath, to the truth of existence, that in and of itself is a pure moment. Which would make sense in a way when discussing the concept of being in the pure land, a place where one can see beyond, live beyond, be beyond the social constructs that are sometimes not helpful. And so, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., we can still have a purpose, and we can still have a focus that helps to better humanity, that he was essential in the civil rights movement, and the civil rights movement would not have been the same without him. And so instead of, focusing on one's faults, sometimes it actually helps to like fertilize the soil of their soul, like to help build people up by focusing on their positive qualities. That doesn't mean that we should ignore where we need to improve as individuals. That doesn't mean to condone certain behaviors that hurt other people, because we want to be the kind of people that cause the least amount of harm and the most amount of good, while also remaining balanced in our own soul's authenticity. And becoming that takes practice. And when you're practicing, you make mistakes. But you can still make huge impacts in the world that help people, like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. So this weekend, keep him in mind, keep him in your heart and soul. Maybe look up some of his quotes or speeches and look at the areas in your life where you could be helping humanity more, and as well as areas in your life where you could improve how you are in line with your own beliefs and values.